This podcast is part of the Spoon Podcast Network, home of smart conversations that feed your mind.
Well, hi, I'm Amy Wu, and welcome to Women Innovators in Food and Farming, where I spotlight some of the entrepreneurs behind the innovation shaping the future of food and farming. A bit about myself is that I'm an award-winning journalist specializing in writing about food and ag innovation. I'm the founder of From Farms to Incubators, a multimedia platform that amplifies and tells the stories of amazing women in food and farming. I'm really excited to have with me today our guest, Ponsi the CEO of Inari. I'm going to give Ponsi a short intro, and then we're going to just jump right into this discussion today. I'm super excited about it. Born in Thailand, Ponsi is the director, CEO of Inari, the SEEDesign company using predictive design and advanced multiplex gene editing to unlock the future potential and the full potential, I should say, Ponsi, of seed. She earned her undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, focusing on fiber optics, and realizing that she wanted to work more closely with people. She earned her MBA at Cornell University and then joined McKinsey. Ponsi, is super exciting for me to connect again. Just a little bit for our guests, as I've known Ponsi for a number of years now. I remember first interviewing you for the book From Farms to Incubators, where you shared your personal story, about how you entered agriculture, and you've been very super generous in sharing your insights, your knowledge. She's very supportive also when it comes to mentoring and inspiring the next generation of young people and youth to consider career pathways in ag and food innovation. I'm just going to jump right in here, Ponsi. Well, congratulations first on the recent news on the fresh round of funding, 144 million, and that's very, very exciting. I mean, I just want to say, well, first of all, Happy New Year! What a great way to start the new year, right? And maybe you could share a little bit with us about what this really means for you and the company in terms of the development of your products and progress, and how are you celebrating?
Yeah. Hi, Amy. It's good to see you again, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast. So it has been great, and I highly appreciate the existing investors as well as the new investors that we welcome them to join the recent fundraise round. And this is great opportunity for us to focus on being a seed design company, meaning what we want to do is to increase the yield of the crops while taking much less resources, whether that would be land, water, or chemical fertilizer. And so far, with the existing and the new investors, we're grateful that all of them look at this criticality of the food system, look at the needs of us, whether that would be the needs around the food security, farmers' profitability, or environmental sustainability. By the way, those three things combined together is our definition of the food system. And all of them look at this as the long term objective, long term investment in terms of how we could fundamentally change and improve and contribute to our food system there. So, this is a great part of the year to start off.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. This means that, does this mean also that you and your team and the organization are actually going to be growing? Are you hiring more folks as well? And what kind of folks will you be hiring? I always ask this question because we have lots of young people interested always in career pathways.
Yes, so in terms of the focus for us going forward, we are going into a different phase than before. Previously, when we started this company, which was founded by Flagship Pioneering back at the end of 2016, we were focusing a lot on the science, the tools, and over the past couple of years, we were focusing a lot on developing the products. Now we started to enter into the commercialized phase of the first crop, which is soybeans. So that part we will grow further. The areas that we'll be focusing on in terms of adding more people would be closer to the area of commercialization. The other piece that answer to your question too, Emmy, on what else that we're focusing on. So as a CEO, I always focus on both long term and short term, right? So
Mhm.
the short term is yes, entering start to enter the commercialization phase. But the long-term value creation of the company is really critical. So we have two areas of platforms when it comes to our technology platform. The first one is AI powered predictive design. In other words,
Mm.
how to use those technology to understand the complexity of the genomes of the crops, which, by the way, a lot more complex than us as human genome.
Yeah.
Okay, so wheat is 6 times more complex than us, right? So that's the first part of the technology platform. The second part is multiplex gene editing,
Hmm.
whereby yes, we use CRISPR, but we use it in a way that are quite subtle to actually mimic the nature, not just only removing the gene, but how do you actually get the expression to mimic the nature, not to disrupt the nature too much around that also. So therefore, the further investment for us will be, we feel pretty good about the multiplex gene
Mhm.
editing now. So the further focus for us would be in the area of the AI powered predictive design. So therefore, the recruitment from the people, not only in biology, right, but also in the AI area, in the predictive design area, is the area that we will continue to recruit there.
How exciting! How exciting! Um, it seems like everybody's talking about AI now, which is, can you share a little bit more? I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about how this AI powered platform works. Like, how does it impact the product, or how is it woven into the product, and how does it impact in the end user, your audience, right? Your audience being being the farmer is the bottom line, right?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, for us is we want to create very high yield seeds that take less resources, right? So the question becomes as how do you do that? Yes, we do have the tool around multiplex gene editing. Okay, so then the question becomes as right, but how do you know where in the crop that you want to go make a better expression, right? So, and everything that we do here, when we say gene editing, we touch the natural genes. So we enhance and express them to be better. So then, okay, all right. When we go into the natural gene, the plant, how do we know that, right? So I'll give you example. In human genome, human has roughly around 20,000 genes in there in the genome, and we have the knowledge in almost all of the genes. Right? When it comes to soybeans, it has 50,000 genes in the genome,
Wow.
right? So 2.5 times more. And in the history, they had been only about 200 genes that they were described by the literature, right? So now you see the magnitude, right? 20,000 knows most of them, 50,000 know only 200. Then how do you go about it, right? So this is when AI comes into play,
Mhm.
whereby it helps us to actually understand that a lot more. How do you actually discover more genes around it? And how do you actually understand the network, the pathway, how each of the genes interact with one another? How do we actually really get to true understanding that unlock the full potential of the crop, of the plant, of the seeds? So that's the area of what we're trying to actually get to that.
Oh, that's very exciting, and I'm hearing that you're starting with back flipping back to the commercialization area. The start of it is you're focusing on soybeans, right? Soybeans are going to be on front and center stage first. Why soybeans?
So we focus in our wave one on three crops: soybeans, corn, and wheat. And the rationale about that is you will look at it as, oh, all three of them are row crops, and we said yes, that's correct. It is roughly 70% of the market, and majority of the acres around the world are that. Yes, there are a couple of other crops too, but when you really look into it, 90% of the sustainability challenges actually come from these three crops, right?
Hmm.
So whether you look at the area of corn consumes the largest amount of nitrogen fertilizer in the world. When you look at soybeans, the acres that have been increasing really fast.
Mhm.
And then you look at wheat, it consumes a lot of pesticide as well.
Mhm.
So for us, we look at all those three crops together. And when we come into play here, We started off with soybeans. That's the history of the company, that we have quite a lot of knowledge about soybeans already. So that helps us, and being a varietal crop rather than a hybrid crop like corn. So it can actually be easier in terms of understand the product performance.
Oh, wonderful. Broadly speaking, what I'm hearing is that the seeds are ultimately more farmer friendly, hopefully more pest resistant, right? Disease resistant, and so forth, right? More robust seeds. So, in the big picture of things, um, how is the innovation um, contributing to the global food system? You know, especially when we talk about sustainability and also, frankly, just producing enough food globally for what is looking like a population that might be up to 10 billion in 2050. So I'm always looking at the big picture of things, right? How is this helping populations, maybe even beyond the US, to
Yeah.
produce food when there's just not enough food distribution sometimes? Yeah.
Yes, certainly that's
It's a big problem, right?
it is a huge problem, right? And
Yeah.
going back to the food system for us, if you want to start off, let's start off with the food production and food security part. And if you go back over the past 3, 4 decades, um, it's actually concerning that we, as an industry, have been able to increase the yield of only 1% per year.
Hmm.
Only 1%. That's it, right? So with the climate change that comes in, with the demand, as you pointed out, Amy, that the demand continues to be there and in fact accelerated. How do you actually reach and then meet the demand, meet the consumption, whether that would be around for feed, whether some of them would be getting biofuel out of better environment as well. So when you look at that, you need like radical innovation, radical
Mhm.
yield increase, right? So, for example, we have the aim of no, we're not going to do like a couple of percent more. How
Mhm.
we think about it is, can you do 10 times better, 20
Hmm.
times better, right? 1% a year, why don't we actually think about step change and increase the yield by 10 to 20 times
Yeah.
or 10 to 20%, right? So that's how we think about it. And then on top of those, you look at it as profitability of the farmers, right? So
Right.
you look at it as only 1% yield increase a year, but what the inputs that they have to buy, whether the land rent cost has been going
Mhm.
up, right? Whether fertilizer cost has been going up. How do you actually get the farmers to have better profitability as well, right? So that's how we think about it.
That's excellent. Can you share, Ponzi, with us a maybe a story? I love stories, story, or maybe even two of how it has helped farmers specifically so far.
So we're just starting, right?
Mhm.
Amy, we're just starting to actually enter into the commercialization phase at Inari. But let me tell you my personal experience why um, productivity, why farmer profitability are extremely close to my heart. This happened more than a decade ago when I was working out of Southeast Asia, right? So I
Mhm.
visited um, a farmer, a corn farmer in Indonesia, right? So back then it was about hybrid corn, and I got this particular Indonesian farmer, and my best guess would be he was probably like 70 something years old, and then he
Um,
came, right, and then he said thank you so much that he was able to get from 4 to 7 tons a hectare. Just to give you a rough idea, 10
mhm.
tons a hectare is like 175 bushels an acre, which is US
Mhm.
average. So he said from 4 to 7 tons a hectare,
Mm.
which he was super happy because it was the first time that he was able to actually buy the cattle for his
Right.
family, right? And then suddenly my colleague back then actually corrected the translation in
Mm.
Bahasa. And what he was saying was actually the first time that he was able to buy meat
Wow.
for his family, right? So now you started to actually realize that, wow, everything that we have faced, for me personally, it has been luxurious, right? So when you think about the impact of innovation, the yield increase can fundamentally change how the farmers, how the family of the farmers, you think about food that they eat, you think about how many grandchildren that they can send it to, not just now elementary school, can you think about college, right? When you change the whole picture of those. And that's really, really important when it comes to the food system challenge that we are facing around the world.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Want to go back to your personal history a bit. How did you share with us again and how you got into food and ag and innovation? Did any of this run in your family as well as you were growing up in Thailand?
Um, yes and no. My grandfather was in rubber plantation, so he was also the head of the village for doing the fishing as well. Right, he was a fisherman back in Malaysia. So that part of like bigger part of agriculture has always been there, but I didn't get a chance to actually grow up on farm, even though now we have farm. So we still have farm there, my husband and I. So the part that drew me in was by chance and being able to understand the impact of agriculture more from the policy perspective as well as from the business perspective. When I got a chance to work at McKinsey, that's when it started to. I started to realize that, oh wow, out of whole industry that I got a chance to work in, and that's the beauty of being in the consulting world. You get to work on a lot of types of the projects,
Mm.
and the part that totally changes my perspective was actually in agriculture area. You just realize that it's the innovation is limited, but
Mm.
once you do something, the impact is just so radical, right? So that's when I really, really started to fall in love with agriculture.
Excellent. Um, over the years, there's a connection and obviously in communicating and maybe perhaps even educating, right? This bridge between innovation and the farming with the farmers. I'm wondering where we are with that, with this connection and communicating innovation to farmers, at least with the farmers that you know and that you work with. Is it getting better? Like, are farmers open to this, or where do you see it heading? What's your crystal ball?
Actually, the other way around, Amy, I would argue that farmers are the best innovator, right? And farmers are actually the people that I respect the most when it comes to occupation. So you have to think about it as this is the only occupation that work and lifestyle are the same,
Mm.
right? So you have only 40 chances in your life, meaning how per year, right? One year you can do only one season, right? How many seasons can you actually take it in terms of growing the crops? So
Mm.
all the farmers that I have seen actually they are all great adopter of technologies, right? The question that we have more is, do we have enough tools for the farmers?
Mm.
Do we actually create the kind of environment, the kind of regulatory to enable the innovations to be adopted by farmers around the world? I think that one is more of the challenge. So far, I actually haven't seen or haven't met the farmers that will push back on the innovation to help the food system. I haven't met them.
What are some, yeah, indeed a challenge. What are some of the potential? What's needed, perhaps, to address those challenges? Yeah.
I think your question around the education is actually the education to the broader community, the consumer, the public sector there, as well as how do we work closely with the regulators. So that's the part that we still need to work on it. The good news is I'm grateful about USDA in the US. So we are we are pretty advanced in terms of how we think about the innovation.
Hmm.
The question becomes as what would be the role of us in helping other countries to also understand the importance of the innovation.
That's actually a really good point. What would be the role that we would take to educate folks in globally and internationally about innovation? What is your opinion of that?
I think we have a lot to share. We in the US here, we have a lot of great technologies. The public and private sectors work together really well. At the end of the day, it's about ecosystem, and I've seen only the positive experiences and positive examples on how we work together. I think it comes into play as how would other parts of the world will get to experience this kind of sector, this kind of examples of the ecosystem that we have here. It could be doing it together between public and private sectors in the US, traveling together, co-discuss together with other countries on how we go about.
Excellent. As we started from the beginning of our conversation, this is a new year, a new beginning in many different ways. So, new year with some changes too in terms of our leadership. I'm just wondering, what is your broad crystal ball about in the near future? About are there will there be any impacts to the ag tech landscape? In terms of funding, fundraising, especially as the political landscape has changed as well. I've heard
Yeah,
some people use certain words like austerity. What's your own take of it?
I'm actually optimistic. I'm very optimistic about this because the at the end of the day, the subject of food system is just so um, in the center of the challenges that we have. No matter where you come from, it's the topic that I don't think anybody would debate whether it is important or not. And as long as we keep innovating,
Hmm.
as long as the regulators continue to support us, I think a lot of great things will happen, and that will be almost like a circle, right? So when you started the innovation, the regulators are supportive, farmers already willing to actually adopt it, then you actually can create more people to do more innovations. And that's how I can see it. And that's why arguably you would say that if you look around the world, the country that has the most innovations when it comes to agriculture is actually here in the US, right? We have got to do something right so far.
So, want to go back to the part about career pathways. You've been very gracious with sharing your story, especially to the next generation of young people as they explore possibilities and careers in ag and innovation. Um, what's some advice that you would like to give some of our younger listeners on what are some career pathways that are present but also very future looking that you can see for as opportunities in food innovation and ag innovation?
Yeah. So um, I started off my career differently, right? So when I was really young, I was hoping that I was going to be a doctor, but my health didn't allow. So I went to the engineering part that Amy shared earlier, and then finally came to be in agriculture here, and I just love what I'm doing in terms of this industry. So one thing that I would recommend is for anyone that look for career, I would argue that look for your true north first. So search for your true north. Once you find the true north, you're going to be able to thrive so much. And no matter what you do in your career, one thing that I can guarantee is there are going to be rough days. And if you're going to work in food, in agriculture,
Hmm.
you're going to fail sometime, you're going to be successful sometime, and things are not easy, are not rosy, things are hard, and that's why it's called career. So the question is not about whether it's hard or it's easy. The question is whether you know the true north of yourself, and when you actually face the challenges, can you pull yourself back to the bigger picture and ask yourself, this is exactly why I wanted to do this, and you would have a lot of energy to solve any challenges.
Thank you, Ponzi, very much for sharing that. Now, outside of food and farming and the exciting work that you do, what are some of your hobbies outside of work? Passions, hobbies? Yeah.
I actually try to spend quite a lot of time with my little one. So my 9 years old daughter. So I try to spend time with her, whatever that she wants to do or wants to play. So for me, is I'm committed outside of my work time with her.
Oh, very, very nice. And from what I recall, do you have a farm? Do you guys have a farm as well?
Yeah, we do. We do. We still have farm back in Asia.
Okay, excellent. And then finally, this is our wild card question of the day. What is the book that you've been reading lately, and what would you recommend to our readers?
Oh, the latest one that I read, which I quite like, is called Awe, The Transformative Power of Everyday Wonder by Decker Kilner. So I would highly recommend anyone to read that. It is about just looking around yourself and appreciate things around you, right? So the life is hard, but there are a lot of beauties around it, and it just keep it gives me a lot of energy.
Wonderful. I always enjoy our conversations and our connect. Ponzi, is there anything else that you like to share? That we maybe missed, or anything you want to reiterate?
So I really appreciate, again, if I'm gonna emphasize anything, is we need everyone to work together. We need an ecosystem when it comes to food and agriculture. Not one single company or one single entity could address the challenges of our lifetime here. So every single encouragement for all of us to work together.
Thank you so much, Ponzi, for your time and for sharing again your insights, your story, your wisdoms with us. I'm signing off until the next episode of Women Innovators in Food and Farming. Please check out my new podcast, Women Innovators in Food and Farming. Thank you again, Ponzi.
Thank you.